Chapter 20. Horror. Following an afternoon walking around fundraising and an enjoyable evening playing soccer with the lads, James was exhausted. When the late service ended at 9:15, he walked up the escalators to the second floor and found a couple of pillows and some frayed sheets to cover his mattress. 26 boys lived in the room, their ages evenly spread between 8 and 18. As the tired lads stripped off and crashed onto their mattresses, two of the oldest, Sam and Ed, switched on a large but decrepit TV and put on a DVD. James was expecting worthy Christian entertainment and was pleasantly surprised when the title music of The Exorcist came on. He'd seen the movie during a horror marathon at the Cherub summer hostel and realised why it was being shown as soon as he remembered the plot. What better way to influence the minds of young survivors than by sending them off to sleep on a movie about a girl possessed by the devil? James's mattress was next to Paul's, almost touching. 20 minutes into the movie, a younger boy crept into the space between them and Paul slid an arm around his back. "This is my brother, Rick," Paul explained in a whisper. James gave the youngster a smile. Within a few minutes, Rick's eyes were sagging and he'd started drifting off to sleep. Paul gently flicked his ear to wake him up. "Keep your eyes open," Paul said firmly. "Do you want to get the test?" James didn't ask, but he could tell from the look on Rick's face that the test was something worth being woken up to avoid. By the end of the movie, even the older boys were struggling to stay awake. When the closing titles began scrolling, Sam and Ed flicked on the lights. They were the biggest dudes in the room, and they looked full of themselves as they glanced around at the kids lying on the mattresses. Staying awake had been too much for a couple of the younger boys. "I think we'll take Martin," Sam said. The pair closed on a scrawny 9-year-old a few mattresses along from James. He was curled up on his pillow, wearing nothing but red underpants. "Test time!" the lads shouted as they shook him awake. Martin woke with a start and scrambled up his bed, away from grabbing hands. "No, please!" "Why did you fall asleep?" Ed asked as he dragged the unfortunate kid off his bed. "You know you have to watch the movie." Sam smiled wickedly. "Now you've got to go out on your own and face the devil." "Are you really an angel? Only an angel can survive the night out there alone. If the devil sniffs weakness, he'll get you. You'll spend the whole night in agony." "Don't make me!" Martin bawled desperately. Sam slid open a glass door, while his partner dragged the gangly youngster across the floor and shoved him outside onto the roof terrace. Martin screamed as he clambered to his feet and banged on the glass door, begging to get back inside. "Sleep tight," the lads said in unison as they laughed. As Martin gave up banging on the glass and slumped into the gravel with his bare back pressed against the glass, Sam noticed a glistening streak across the floor. "Oh, man," Sam giggled, before kicking the glass behind his sobbing victim. "You pissed your pants, you dirty boy." Ed grabbed the pillow off Martin's bed and used it as a foot rag. "Don't worry, mate. We found something to wipe up with." Most of the older lads in the room were smiling, but the little kids looked scared. Sam and Ed were nothing special, and James reckoned he could easily have battered them. But getting in a fight now might ruin his chances of being accepted into the survivor boarding school. James felt bad as he looked at Rick's tense fingers digging into Paul's shoulder. The survivors closely controlled everyone's lives, and James didn't see how this bullying ritual could have become established without people in high places turning a blind eye. Once the lights went out, Rick scrambled back to his own mattress. James pulled his duvet over his head and tried to block out the muffled sobs of the petrified boy sitting out on the balcony. Martin was allowed inside at sunup. His skin was puckered from a night curled up on gravel, but the devils seemed to have left him alone. James's Sunday started with 5 brisk laps around the mall parking lot and a cool shower. Breakfast was honey puff cereal and orange juice, which set up a little sugar rush for the 20 minutes of chanting and singing that followed. At the end of this carefully designed emotional tune-up, James found that he'd shaken off his tiredness and was feeling alert and fairly happy. But he didn't need any of Miriam's thought control techniques to douse his spirits. The prospect of another 4-hour shift as a picker was enough. He smiled at Paul as they crossed the road between the mall and the warehouse. Each book is a brick for the ark. Paul smiled half-heartedly. Elliot would be proud of you. As soon as they entered the warehouse, the foreman looked at James. Are you Prince? James nodded. Yeah? I just got a call. You're due over at administration for an induction test. James smiled at Paul, well pleased to get out of the warehouse. He headed back to the mall and an open-plan office inside a shop unit on the ground floor. There were a dozen paper-strewn desks, but nobody was working at them. James spent a couple of seconds thinking he'd come to the wrong place, until a head bobbed up behind one of the cloth-covered partitions. It was Judith, a fit-looking woman in her early 20s who worked as Elliot's assistant. As he walked to the back of the room, James passed by Lauren and Dana, who both sat at desks, scribbling away on a photocopied question paper. I didn't realise there were 3 of you, Judith explained as she handed James a paper. Survivor aptitude test, ages 13 to 15. I should have called you at breakfast. You've got 2 hours, starting as soon as you sit down. Judith pointed him to a desk near the front of the room, a good 10 metres from Lauren and Dana. The space was already set up with a couple of sharpened pencils and an eraser. James sat in an office chair and flicked through the pages. It looked like a reassuringly straightforward mixture of maths, spelling, a short creative story, and an IQ test.